Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and I just want to first off say that if you happen to hear some drilling on and off during the video, my apologies. But as I've mentioned before, I am in the process of doing a gut renovation of one of my bathrooms, so apologies for the noise. But I wanted to follow up on a video that I released yesterday where I just wanted to start the conversation that was based on an opinion that I had, which was that PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games will be worthless in 30 years. Now, maybe I should have been a little bit more specific by saying that most PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games will be worthless in 30 years. And I would say, the ratio between games of value and games that are worthless on the PlayStation 4 will be much different than the ratio for, say, cartridge-based games like the Super Nintendo, the NES, the Genesis, Neo Geo, things of that nature, older generation games, right? And I got a lot of different responses on that video. I had some people who agreed with me. I had a lot of people who disagreed with me. And one of the main points that I got back was that there are already PlayStation 4 games that are rare and highly valuable. Now, again, there are always going to be the extremes on every system, on every console. No matter which console you go to, there's always going to be that one game that's extremely rare or extremely valuable. But what I was speaking to was, in general, most of the PlayStation 4 games and PlayStation 5 games are going to be worthless. The same way that most Neo Geo games are very expensive, despite all the years that have passed. No matter which Neo Geo game you buy, the average cost of a Neo Geo AES game is just very expensive because of the type of system that it is. And I think that will continue throughout time. The same thing with the Super Nintendo. In general, Super Nintendo games are more valuable. There are more rare and valuable Super Nintendo games than there are PlayStation 4 games. Now, the reason why I feel like no matter how much time passes, PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games aren't going to be worth that much as a whole is for a couple reasons. First reason is that with most PlayStation 4 games and PlayStation 5 games, you never really get the full game. A lot of these games are heavily dependent on internet access, and not just internet access, but it depends on you being connected to the server that allows you to download the update or the patch. Now, does it mean that you can't play these games based on the information that's on the disc? No. But the game that you'll be playing 30 years from now, unless you still have a system that already has the downloaded patches and updates, isn't really going to be the best form of the game. It might be actually an incomplete form of the game. Now, if people 30 years from now want to collect the plastic and the paperwork and the discs, I'm sure there will always be a market for that, but it's not going to be the way it is when it comes to the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. Now, we are officially 30 years removed from the Super Nintendo, and I laid this out because today we are still making games and re-releasing games from 30 years ago. So what will it mean if 30 years from now we're still re-releasing these same games? That would tell me that there's probably going to be a lack of innovation, and most people who play video games or are into the hobby of video games, they're going to want to go back to the original source of where the game was first released and what would give them the most nostalgic experience, because a lot of times we play these older games to get that old school feeling. And I don't really see many modern games being released that's driving that level of nostalgia in kids these days. Now, 30 years from now, what games do I think this generation will remember? I think they'll remember things like Animal Crossing, which is a game that everyone played during the pandemic. I think they'll remember games like Fortnite, which is a game that a lot of people played. And again, this is coming from just a casual observer of video games, right? I'm not a gaming historian. I'm just going based off of what I see in general, not things that I have to go and research, not things that I have to go and dig up, but just what I hear my friends say they're playing, what I see talked about more so online. And it just seems like there's not very many experiences that are being made or that this generation is having that's a great differentiator, right? So when I think about a game like Mega Man X or the Mega Man X collection, we've gotten so many releases of the Mega Man X collection. We got it on the PlayStation. Well, the original series obviously started on the Super Nintendo, and then it continued all the way from the Super Nintendo until it got to the PlayStation 1, and then eventually I think 7 and 8 landed on the PlayStation 2, and then that's where pretty much the Mega Man X series ended. Now, since being released on, since its last installment on the PlayStation 2, we've seen the Mega Man X collection, the whole collection re-released on the PlayStation 2, the GameCube. I don't know if we saw a re-release on the PlayStation 3. I think it might have skipped the PlayStation 3 generation. Somebody let me know. I don't know everything, so let me know if I'm wrong down in the comments. But then you see the Mega Man X collection reemerge on the PlayStation 4. I'm not sure if it was also on the PlayStation 5. But no matter how many times they re-release this game, the original cart is still $30. You're still always going to have to pay at least $30 for the original Mega Man X. Why? Because there's a differentiator. There's something that differentiates playing the game in this format versus playing it on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 2, GameCube, and all the other formats that you can play the Mega Man X collection. This is the original format, and this is the most nostalgic format, right? In a lot of ways, this is probably the most durable format, if you ask me, because discs are so fragile. Disc route, this, that, and the third. But a Super Nintendo cartridge is built tough, man. These things are built to last, and they just evoke a different feeling of nostalgia, and it provides a different type of entertainment for the gamer. And so that's part of the reason why I feel like cartridges are always going to stand the test of time, because they don't make anything even close to this format anymore. The only companies that are still releasing cartridges are like limited run and stuff, and they're doing that purely for nostalgia, because they want to give you that feeling of putting a cartridge back into the console. And again, that only works if you actually have a Super Nintendo. So I could be completely wrong here, but to me, there's such a big differentiation. There's such a difference in experience between the cartridge and the disc that I think keeps the cartridge at a level where I don't know if discs will ever reach. Again, you can go out today and buy the complete Mega Man X collection on PlayStation 4, but it's going to be the same price as just buying Mega Man X1 on the Super Nintendo. It's still going to be at least $30. Maybe $25 if you find someone willing to sell it. And if you try to go get a complete in-box copy of Mega Man X, well, you're talking about $100, $150, $200. Still. Why? Because this experience is different from every other experience. And I think that's where I was coming from when I was making the statement that I don't think PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5s are going to be really worth anything 30 years from now, because what type of experience will a person 30 years from now be looking for when trying to play the game? If this is just a port or an emulation or whatever of this original hardware, well, they'll probably say, well, why would I need to get it on PlayStation 4? They may download it. They may play it on Steam. They may play it on all the reasons why someone would just emulate in general would probably be the reason why they won't even really care to play it on the PlayStation 4. Whereas there's always going to be that differentiating factor with playing a game on a cartridge that I think separates it from all other experiences. And I just used all of these as an example, right? Because we're seeing PlayStation do that. They're still re-releasing games from 30 years ago. You got Castlevania, a classic game. And what's funny is that I think this game actually went up in value. You still got to pay $45, I think, to get a loose cart version of Super Castlevania 4. At least $40 to $45 for a cartridge, right? Whereas you could probably get the collection for maybe the same price. But just for that one game, it's still $45. Or even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection, you can get all the Ninja Turtle games on Amazon right now for $20, $25. But guess what? If you want to play it in its original format, if you want to get the original experience, you got to cough up $40 to $45. And so I just kind of laid all of these out just to kind of make that point. And I'm interested to know your thoughts, because I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is what I see as a casual collector. As great as these games are, and as much as I love having them in my collection, because I'm not about to go out and buy every single Castlevania game that was made. Same thing with the Turtles and same thing with Mega Man X. It would be way too expensive. This is a much more cost-effective way to play these games. But 30 years from now, will someone be paying $100, $200, $300 for this? No. I strongly disagree that someone will pay that for that. But I think this cartridge, its base of $25, $30, that's the lowest it's going to be. I think that these cartridges are just going to continue to go up because they're going to continue to be more and more rare. And if things get more and more rare and more valuable over time, then that should mean that these will get more valuable over time. But I don't think that's it. I don't think that that's always the case. Obviously, it's different for every game. But when it comes to certain games and certain titles, I just don't see the value being there decades to come. And that's with games like this, right? That don't really even need much downloading and much patches and stuff like that. Forget about the games that I showcased yesterday, Ghost of Tsushima and Elden Ring. These types of games, these open world, exploration based, large format games, these games really rely on the internet to maintain their, to be able to play them in their best format. And then you got to think, the games that are going to be coming out on the PlayStation 5, they're going to be expanding with more open world formats and more NPCs, and eventually AI is going to take over. And you're going to need AI. AI is going to be the ones controlling the NPCs in the game. They're no longer going to be programmed. They're going to be artificial intelligence helping you throughout the game. And what that's going to mean is just that games are going to be even more dependent on being connected to a network that's constantly updating, whether it be the structure of the game, the structure of the open world, the NPCs that are in the game, the responses that you get from the NPCs. And then forget about it if they continue to incorporate, political ideas and agendas and just different themes and tropes and different things in games. These games in the future are going to be more and more dependent on an internet connection and being connected to a network. And what happens when that network is gone? When a game is so dependent on a network, to me, it's not as valuable without it, neither in the present nor in the future. And that's the difference between these games, these Super Nintendo games, these Sega Genesis games. These games aren't dependent on a network. These games are their own world and their own experience unto themselves. And I think that's what makes them valuable today. And I think that's what's going to continue to keep them valuable 30 years from now. But that's really what I was trying to say. Again, I could be wrong. This is all subjective. I love the fact that there was so much disagreement. I just want to put this out there. I love when folks disagree with my thoughts and opinions, because if I had a group of people following me that agree with everything I said, I wouldn't be happy, because, that doesn't feel real. So I love when people disagree. I love when there's different thoughts and opinions, because that's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how we gain perspective. And just, reading some of your different comments and thoughts on the idea definitely kind of made me think about some things, for sure. So I'm interested to keep the conversation going. I'm interested to know what everyone thinks about this. Let me know down in the comments. It's the Y2K Collector. I'll be back with another video this afternoon. Take it easy.